In late 2020, SEGA had a huge milestone coming up with its 60-year anniversary, and to celebrate, they had some pretty big plans. When the date rolled around in October, they had a new advertising campaign in Japan featuring the son of their old television mascot who died near the end of the SEGA Saturn's life, a new line of mini consoles like the Mini Game Gear and the Astro City Mini, a big anniversary livestream, the largest character popularity poll in the history of the company, and most importantly for today's video, a handful of limited time games that were made just to celebrate the anniversary and given away for free for a limited time on Steam. One of these anniversary games was called Streets of Kamurocho, with this being a mashup of the Yakuza series and one of Sega's most iconic classic titles, Streets of Rage 2. This was a very nice surprise for fans, especially with the massive explosion in the Yakuza series' popularity after the release of Yakuza 7 just earlier that year. But was it any good? Well, over the last week, I've sunk a few hours into this largely forgotten celebration of Sega's legacy to answer just that very question. So, without any further ado, let's talk about it. But before getting too far into the video, I should mention that this is the 19th in a series of videos where I'm playing every single game in the Yakuza series for the first time in release order and reviewing them as I go along. You don't have to have seen the other videos in the series in order to enjoy this one, but you would probably enjoy them if you're a big fan of the Yakuza franchise. So if you're interested in checking out the other videos either before or after watching this one, I'll have the full playlist linked in the description below. But with that out of the way, Streets of Kamurocho is a beat-em-up game developed by Empty Clip Studios and published by Sega for PC in 2020. The story here is a very simple spin on Yakuza 1's story. Upon booting up the game, we're simply told that the death of the Tojo clan's third chairman has plunged the organization into chaos, and that violence has spread to the streets. Now, only Kazuma Kiryu and Goro Majima can put an end to the bloodshed. And I just have to say, this pixel art render of the iconic shot of Nishikiyama from Yakuza Kiwami with text over it talking about violence spilling into the streets just goes so hard. Which actually brings us right into the presentation of the game, which I have to say is absolutely awesome. All of the pixel art here looks really damn good, and I don't even mean just the character or enemy sprites, but I mean everything down to the backgrounds just looks incredible here. With the backgrounds themselves even having little details like the automatic doors at the convenience stores opening and closing when people go near them. All of the character sprites also feel like they have just the right amount of animation frames to give that nice middle ground between everything feeling smooth, yet also distinctively old school. And the music in this game is also great. In Streets of Kamurocho, you get to choose between playing as either Kazuma Kiryu or Goro Majima when booting up the game. And after you've beaten the game at least one time, you'll also unlock Ichiban Kasuga as a secret third playable character. Depending on which character you play as, you'll get these awesome 16-bit remixes of Funk Goes On, Receive You, or Yokohama Crack House respectively, with each of these tracks being iconic for their respective character, and all sounding really good here. The Funk Goes On remix in particular is especially great. Like, seriously, at this point, I'm just convinced that this song goes hard no matter what you do to it. The gameplay of Streets of Kamurocho is very straightforward, and pretty much just Streets of Rage 2, but with a Yakuza makeover. You'll start up the game, walk forward through the stage, and enemies will attack you along the way to try to stop you from reaching the end. Your goal is simply to reach the end of the stage, but at certain points, the screen won't be able to scroll any further unless you defeat all of the enemies currently attacking you. So if you want to make it to the end, you're required to beat up most of the enemies who come at you. Plus, you get points for defeating enemies, and since this is an arcade beat 'em up, you want as many points as you can get so you can brag to your friends about your high score. As far as actually fighting the enemies goes, the combat is also incredibly simple. Now, I should mention here that regardless of which character you choose, all three of them share the same moveset, with that moveset being based on Axel Stone's moveset from Streets of Rage. There are some slight differences in certain animations between them, but aside from that, they all play exactly the same, which is honestly a bit disappointing given how cool it would have been to have a unique moveset for each of them that reflects their character. But this was just a little promotional game that was given away for free, so how much can you really complain about? Despite how simple the combat is though, it actually has a solid amount of depth for those who try to experiment with it and find the best ways to efficiently take down enemies. You could simply mash your way through the entire game with the basic combo, but doing so will make your life a lot more difficult than it needs to be, and you'll just be far more effective if you learn to mix in the other options available. You have a dedicated button for your basic attack, and pressing this multiple times will get you a basic combo that you could mash through the entire game with, but it won't be very fun or effective. As far as other options go, you can grab enemies by simply walking into them, and from this grab state, you can choose to beat them up with a couple of different combos, headbutt them to send them flying back, throw them over your back into other enemies for some crowd control, or even flip sides to get behind them and initiate a brutal drop onto their back. There are various jumping attacks available to the player as well, with the basic one just dealing a chunk of damage and sending enemies flying back, but with there being some different ones that can be initiated with a directional input while jumping that will deal a smaller amount of damage, but will leave the enemy standing, opening them up for a full combo after the fact, if your execution is quick enough. There are also a bunch of special attacks that can be found through various motion inputs and button combos, with these being incredibly worthwhile to learn and mix into your combat strategy, and especially into your combos. That being said, the most powerful special attacks in the game will tire out your character so much that it will cost you a bit of your health to use them, so you have to be very careful about when you actually choose to throw these ones out. Weapons can also drop on occasion, and players are, of course, able to pick them up and use them just like in any other Yakuza game. Some of these weapons actually drop from enemies, and will change into different weapons depending on which character you're playing as. Kiryu gets a traffic cone, Majima gets a baseball bat, and Ichiban gets a massive 2x4. And believe me, you don't know true power until you find the almighty traffic cone in Streets of Kamurocho. I mean, all of these character-specific weapons are super powerful, but Kiryu's traffic cone has a significantly larger hitbox than the other two, so on top of the immense strength of it, it's also just easier to use and can hit multiple enemies in one swing, which just makes it comically overpowered for something as simple as a traffic cone. So like I said, it's simple, but it has a lot to learn for those who bother to put in a little effort, and the learning curve here is surprisingly satisfying. My first run as Kiryu, the game felt really slow and awkward to me, but by the time I was finishing my third run of the game as Ichiban, I was feeling really good and chaining massive combos together against some of the toughest enemies in the game thanks to my knowledge of the mechanics. It's honestly a ton of fun, and I would definitely say that the combat is the highlight of the experience here, which is a good thing considering it makes up pretty much the entirety of your time playing. Now, the biggest thing holding Streets of Kamurocho back is easily its lack of content. I already mentioned that all three playable characters share the same moveset, making them all the exact same outside of the background music that plays, or the one specific weapon that drops here and there for each of them. But what makes this issue even worse is that there's only a single stage in this game, which, if you could believe it, is based on the first level of Streets of Rage 2, but redone to look like Kamurocho, complete with plenty of recognizable streets and buildings throughout, and even a portion fighting through Bacchus. This makeover is incredibly charming for fans of the series, but the fact that there's only a single stage on offer here definitely holds the game back a good bit. This one stage is split into 3 smaller sections though, and at the end of each one of them, you'll get a boss fight against one of the iconic bosses from Yakuza 1. You'll fight Lao Kalong at the end of the early portion in the streets, Koji Shindo at the end of the Bacchus section, and finally, you'll cap off the stage with a fight against Akira Nishikiyama and his goons in a back alley. Once you complete the stage, which takes all of like 10 minutes to do, you'll simply loop back to the start of the stage and the difficulty will increase. Which I will admit is actually a pretty good way of having done this, as it's surprisingly fun to see how high you can get the difficulty to scale in just one run. Especially so because the higher you go, the higher your score will be. And like I mentioned before, the main reason for replaying Streets of Kamurocho over and over again will be to try to achieve a new score to brag about. As fun as the looping and the increasing difficulty is though, it only prevents the boredom from creeping in for so long, as by the time that you're on your third or fourth loop of a run, you'll definitely start to feel some fatigue creeping in. Now, probably the highlight of my time with the game was playing it with a second player. The game does support local 2-player co-op, so if you've got a friend or partner who would be down to get together and play it with you, you can have 2 characters running around beating up thugs rather than just one. I tried it out a bit with my girlfriend, and we actually had a really good time with it. The old Streets of Rage games were always designed for the arcades with that 2-player experience in mind, and you can definitely feel that DNA when you play with 2 players here. So if you plan on checking this out, I would highly recommend that you try to get a second player to check it out with you. Just be warned that there is friendly fire and you can damage the other player, and we couldn't find a way to turn that off. Which might sound like a bad thing, but in all honesty, it was absolutely hilarious whenever we would accidentally grab or throw each other, and we were just dying laughing and having a blast with it regardless. Overall, I enjoyed Streets of Kamurocho a lot more than I had thought I would. It's a very simple and bare bones experience with barely any content, but the core of it really is enjoyable, and the charm is just off the charts here. As a celebration of Sega's legacy, mixing one of their old hits with one of their new ones, it's just so damn charming, and the strong gameplay of Streets of Rage 2 is still just as good as ever. If you haven't checked this one out yourself before, I would highly recommend that you do so. You'll likely only get 1 or 2 hours of fun out of it, but it's free and just a really good time, especially if you've got someone else that you can bring along for the ride. It's a short and sweet experience that's nothing like the rest of the Yakuza series, which is honestly something that I wish we'd see Sega mix in alongside the large-scale mainline titles more often. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give Streets of Kamurocho a 6.5 out of 10. That's going to wrap up this short little video, but do be sure to check out my other Yakuza videos if you haven't already, or if you're looking to branch out a bit, maybe check out the series we did a while back where I played and reviewed every game in the Armored Core series. Thank you for watching, and a very special thank you to our channel members and patrons who make series like this one possible. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like or a comment to help me out with the algorithm, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one, and I'll hope to see all of you right back here for the next Yakuza review.